Hi, everyone. So I'll start this in French and I'll be back with you, Cody, after, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue à cet autre Lunch and Learn de Passion Whisky Québec. Aujourd'hui, on va être avec Cody Reynolds, l'ambassadeur de marque de Angus Dundee. Comme d'habitude, si vous avez des questions, vous pouvez les poser dans le chat sur YouTube ou sur Facebook. Donc, on va être en mesure de les poser par la suite directement à Cody. Aujourd'hui, ce qu'on va faire, c'est discuter un peu des deux distilleries, donc Tomintoul et Glencadam, puis parler de chacun des produits qu'on va avoir, en fait, qui sont actuellement dans une importation, dans un groupe d'importation privé sur la page de Passion Whisky Québec. Puis Cody va pouvoir nous parler un petit peu de chacun des produits. Donc, encore une fois, n'hésitez pas si vous avez des questions. C'est vraiment sous forme de discussion avec Cody aujourd'hui. Donc, s'il n'y en a pas, moi j'en ai, j'ai un paquet de questions aussi là, pour Cody. On va essayer de faire ça en à peu près 30-40 minutes aujourd'hui. Donc, I'm back in English. Do you speak French by any chance, or?
Not enough French, so I apologize for everyone. Hopefully you understand my English okay, but I need to work. I need to work on my French. We're going to be doing a little bit more work in France this year, so maybe I use this as the year that I actually get quite good at French. I haven't done it since school.
Good, no problem. So we will do this in English anyway today. Thank you for joining us, Cody. You're, as I mentioned, the brand ambassador for, or global ambassador for Angus Dundee. And you have within Angus Dundee many things, but you have Tomintoul and Glencadam, among other things. We'll talk a little bit more about Tomintoul and Glencadam today. But maybe at the end, you can present a little bit more what you have also under Angus Dundee anyway. But before going any further, I just want maybe you to present yourself, introduce yourself, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Glencadam and Tomintoul.
Yep, absolutely. So again, thank you for anyone coming along and listening, and I'll try and talk reasonably clearly and slowly. But my name's Cody. As we said, I'm the global ambassador for Angus Dundee Distillers. I got into whiskey through my family. My grandfather was a very big whiskey drinker. I used to come in from playing football when I was younger and ask for an orange juice and be handed a whiskey instead, which when I was younger, I really wanted the orange juice, to be honest. But I grew up around it, and I kind of fell in love with it through him, and the interactions I could have with my grandfather every weekend when I was over with him. I studied geography at Edinburgh University, and I was looking for a dissertation topic in my last year. And sadly, at that time, my granddad developed dementia, and he wouldn't quite remember me or my mother. You'd sit in front of him, and he'd assume I'm a nurse or someone trying to help him. But if you handed him a whiskey and a glass, a light would spark in his eyes, and he'd instantly remember who I was again. And that made me really fall in love with the drink. Beforehand, I enjoyed drinking a whiskey, but I think it was that moment that made me want to work in whiskey and sort of do everything in my life around it. So I did my dissertation at university on the drink, moved into the whiskey industry as soon as I left university, and the opportunity to work for a family-owned company came up. There's not many family-owned companies left in Scotland that own traditional distilleries. So when that opportunity came up to work for a family company, and with the fact that I'd got into it through family, I jumped at the opportunity and was very thankful to get the job. So I've been with Angus Dundee for about 5 years now. I love the brands and I love the company, so I enjoy talking about it, which is what we're going to do today.
Awesome. Yeah, great story. We can right now jump in this part and talking maybe first about Glencadam. I have just a small picture here of the distillery. Obviously, we don't see all the distillery on this picture, but it's still a small distillery.
Yep. For traditional distillery standards, it is. There's so many new, almost micro distilleries these days in Scotland that, you know, Glencadam by default is almost slowly becoming a bigger distillery as all these little ones start to join underneath it. But
Yeah.
for a distillery of its age, then yes, it is on the smaller side of things, and it's smaller than our sister distillery, Tomintoul. Um, I said for its age, Glencadam has a big birthday this year. It turns 200 years old in 2025.
Yeah.
Started in 1825 and still going strong. So it produces about around 1.3 million liters, give or take, which again, for the traditional distillery standards, is on the smaller side of things.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, there are smaller joining, but even the smaller one who were around 400, 800,000 liters a few years ago, they are growing. I'm thinking
Yeah,
about Killoman and these smaller distilleries that are now growing even more. So yeah, at 1.3, it's still on the low range of
yeah.
the production. And
There's we don't really have room to increase that at this distillery either. That's kind of our maximum output. You know,
okay,
doesn't matter how well I do my job talking to you guys and how many bottles of Glencadam I ever sell. It will be very difficult for us to ever increase production at this distillery.
okay,
It's sandwiched between the local park, which is just on the right-hand side of that picture where the trees are,
okay,
and the local graveyard, which would be on the bottom left-hand side. So you
okay.
either have to knock down the swings for the kids, or you have to dig up the graves and deal with a different type of spirit, which you don't want to
Yeah.
deal with. So we're stuck in between. There's not much room to make this thing any bigger. So 1.3 or roughly around that, it is about where we're going to be forever.
Okay. Awesome. And uh, the mindset of the let's say the products that are reaching the market is also should I say a little bit more um, directed to whiskey lovers and people who know a bit more about whiskey. Just the fact that it's all 46%, it's on-chill filter, it's what's the target? What's the yeah target market basically of Glencadam?
Basically, what you said. Glencadam has a fantastic spirit. Our base spirit at Glencadam is gorgeous. It's like freshly squeezed pineapple juice. You can almost smell it coming out the spirit safe. You
Hmm.
can make an incredible pina colada out of the Numic. Now, that would be 70% alcohol cocktail, so maybe a one and done cocktail. Maybe not for lunch and learn, but it's the new make is amazing. There's some absolutely incredible distilleries in Scotland where their new make is actually quite weird if you ever try it. But give it
Yeah.
some time in a cask, and it really comes into its own. Glencadam's one of the few that I can drink young Glencadam and love it. It's very sort of, as we said, bright and fruity and pineapple and yellow stone fruits. And then as it ages, it really sort of rounds off as well. So I think presenting it at 46% really non-chill filtered, it just kind of lets that spirit shine a little bit. It's also one of the few distilleries that is 200 years old that we've talked about. So long time it's been around.
Mhm.
Um, a little bit under the radar. So a lot of people have not tried it, even though it's quite an old distillery. And the quality is excellent as well. So it's got three things going for it that are quite rare to have all those three in Scotland today.
Yeah.
Normally, if you're that been around that long, people have heard of you, or if they haven't heard of you, it's because maybe the spirits, not that great, but it's useful in
Yeah.
other ways. Glencadam spirit is fantastic. The distillery is very old and it's still under the radar. So there's very few distilleries left that tick all three boxes.
Yeah, and even here in Quebec province, I mean, that's still a distillery that we are discovering. Yeah, the products have been a little bit here, but just doing private import with the group a few years ago with the Reserva and Delucia.
Mhm.
It was a good discovery, and now the other products we're going to have is also part of this range, and we're going to talk about that later. But yeah, it's very interesting. Same thing also with maybe Tomintoul. Um, Not a distillery we are used to see here on the shelves, and they are very nice products in this for this distillery as well. Maybe we can talk a little bit about Tomintoul also. It's a different distillery. It's bigger. It's younger in a way. So maybe you can just describe that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is younger, but it also has a birthday this year. It turns 60, which means it gets its bus pass in Scotland, so it can go on the buses for free because it's turned 60 years old. So Tomintoul was started back in 1965, and a lot of the equipment that went into Tomintoul back then was pretty large, you know, kind of quite sort of cutting edge for the 60s. However, it's very much as it was when we first put it in. So both of our distilleries are, give or take, completely manual, which again is becoming a little bit less common today.
Yeah.
A lot of distilleries today use sort of semi-automated systems where there's very smart computer systems. You can sit in front of a screen like we are today, and you can see your barley come in, you can see your ABVs, your temperatures. You know, the systems can really help you with production, whereas if we don't turn off something or check the temperatures, it'll explode, which is what it was back in the day. So Tomintoul, as you said, is a little bigger, around 3.3 million litres, give or take, and is situated up in the Speyside region of Scotland rather than the Eastern Highlands, which is where Glencadam is. It's located in the Speyside Glenlivet estate and Glenlivet Valley, so near the Glenlivet, who are significantly larger than us. So we still are on the small side of things compared to some of the big boys around us. But as I said, it's very much a manual process. The differences in the spirits between the two, if we're going to talk about that a little bit, is Glencadam spirit, as we said, is like pineapple juice. It's very tropical, it's very bright, it's very fresh, and has a little bit of a sort of texture to it as well. Whereas Tomintoul for me is a lot more sort of biscuity and malty. It's a little bit sort of weightier. You get a lot of that sort of richness come through in Tomintoul spirit. And the big equipment that went into it in the 60s means it has very tall stills, which produces in general quite a soft style of spirit as well. The other main difference between our two distilleries would be the fact that Tomintoul produces both peated and unpeated whiskey, whereas Glencadam is strictly unpeated. So Tomintoul can produce peated whiskey for 3 weeks in the summer and 3 weeks in the winter, but the vast majority of its spirit is also unpeated.
Yeah. Okay. And so on the picture there, this is the warehouses basically at the back. And am I right to say that there's some Glencadam cask also aging in this warehouse?
Absolutely. So
because it's too small at Glencadam basically.
Yeah, so we really have three main sites where we keep our casks. Glencadam can keep roughly around 22,000 casks on site in a combination of traditional dunnage warehousing and also racked warehousing. Tomintoul can keep a lot more, about 120,000, and that is racked and palletized warehousing. So there are three main types of warehousing in Scotland. Traditional dunnage, which is open earth floor, and is normally 3 high. You will see in this photo that they go up to 4. Today legally you have to keep it at 3, so you don't have to take down a cask that is at 4. But if we ever took one off that top rack, we couldn't put it back to 4.
Okay,
if you know what I mean. It's for health and
safety, or
it's for safety. Yeah, there's been a few mishaps in the past with these casks, as a lot of it in a dunnage is done by hand. We did have a gentleman try and almost catch a cask once that fell off one of the racks, and his knees went through his feet. He's still alive, but you know, he's maybe about 3'3" these days, a much smaller man. So I highly recommend if a full whiskey cask is ever rolling towards you, just get out the way.
To
stop it. But these things are heavy. So yeah, traditional dunnage warehousing, they're fantastic. They're great for your losses. What I mean by that is you get very little loss in a dunnage warehousing. our dunnage warehouse, sorry, the fluctuations in temperature are very, very consistent. And we have two types of dunnage warehouse. What I mean by that is we have one that is an open earth floor dunnage, and we also have one which is a concreted floor dunnage, and they smell very different as well.
Yeah.
The open earth one is this beautiful, almost sweet, musty, woody oakiness to it. And then the concreted one, you get all the vapors bounce off the floor and come back up. So it's a big shock as you go in, but you get a lot more of that sweet alcohol note come through. So they're both beautiful in their own way.
Okay, very different then, yeah.
Yeah. The other styles are the racked ones. They're almost like a wine rack. So your casks are slotting into metal racks. And the benefit of racked warehousing is you can keep more in them. They're far more efficient for how many casks you can get in a warehouse compared to dunnage. But you lose that sort of historic tie. But racked arguably is the most convenient because they're still, your losses are pretty good, but you can get more in because you can go about 11 or so high in a racked warehouse. The final style is palletized. We have a little bit of palletized at Tomintoul. That's as it sounds. They're on pallets and they're stacked this way instead of this way for the casks. You tend to keep younger spirit in palletized warehousing. The reason for that is, although you can stack lots and lots of casks in a palletized warehouse, so they're very efficient for how many casks you can get in. If you have any leakages in the back, the only way to get to the back is to get all the whiskey out the front. So you have to take everything out to get to the ones at the back. Like if I wanted to take a bottle off my shelf behind me, I need to move the bottles at the front to get to the ones at the back. That's what you have to do in a dunnage. Sorry, in a palletized warehouse. And that can lead to losses through leakage over time. So you keep younger spirit in that. Any kind of aged spirit tends to be in your dunnage or your racked.
So so you can have easier access and keep track of exactly how the cask are aging. Okay, yeah, I understand. Just before going on the list of products we have for the group order, I'll go back at this picture of Glencadam, and you were saying to me that it's not quite accurate right now because there are construction going on site for a new visitor center. That's what
Correct.
So what's so there are too many people coming to see you guys at the distillery, so it was too small, or is that for future growth of visitors? What's the
more so more people come and see us. So Glencadam's tucked away on the eastern coast of Scotland. The east coast of Scotland is a beautiful part of the country. Fantastic area for growing crops as well. Get a lot of fruits and barley and things growing on that side. But it's actually the last traditional distillery left in the Kingdom of Angus, where sort of Aberdeen Angus beef used to come from back in the day. We still get it there, but you get it everywhere these days. So you, in the past, could knock on the door at Glencadam, and if one of our stillmen was available to show you around, you could be shown round. But this is such a historic distillery with such fantastic spirit that we really want more people to be able to come and see us. So we are working on building the first visitor center this distillery has ever had. And it should be basically good to go by the summer of this year. Yeah, and don't have an exact date, but sort of mid to late summer, it should be open to the public. It's gonna look absolutely beautiful. We're sort of making it a little bit easier to get around the distillery for people. If you've ever been to a very old distillery, you'll realize that all the doors are literally about 5'8". Everyone in Brechin, where Glencadam is situated, must have been very small in the past. I'm not the tallest guy, but even I had to duck through everything. So health and safety wise, we had to help people get round. But we're sort of going to blend a lot of that history of what Glencadam has always been, but also make it a little bit more approachable and make people come, be able to come and see us and have a look around it. It's going to be amazing. The heart and soul of this visitor centre is the water wheel that has been brought back to Glencadam. So it's the only internal running water wheel at a distillery in Scotland. The water wheel would have powered everything back in the 1800s. You have to remember that back then there was no electricity at Glencadam or in the town that is situated in Brechin. So you would have made whiskey by candlelight. It would have been the elements that made the whiskey. You would have had fire under your still, water for production, and earth would be your barley. So water, fire, and earth is all you needed. And we've brought the water back. So obviously we've always had the water there, but we've now got the water wheel back in, which is going to be running right in the still room. So you'll be able to see the stills and see our water wheel that's going to be running, and that'll be generating electricity, which will go back into the distillery itself.
Okay, because it will not just for tourists. It will definitely be used to generate electricity outside.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great. And so talking about Glencadam, and we talked about the tonnage, and for the product we have, and I'm going to bring that picture with the list of all the products. So the Glencadam products, as you mentioned, for most of them are aged first in these old tonnage warehouses, and then they can go in different other warehouses for finishing or for other or additional aging, longer aging, for example, or something like that. So maybe you can give us a little bit more information, maybe first about the Glencadam range there, and then we can talk about the two Tomintoul's. So let's talk about the Glencadam 17 there. That is the Reserva PX.
So absolutely. The way our company works at Angus Dundee is we love the spirit from both of our distilleries. You tend to get two different kind of styles of whiskey in Scotland, of which I love both styles. There's ones that are a little bit more spirit forward. So a lot of the time you're trying to make sure you can taste the spirit right the way through all of the range. And then you get other styles of distillery which are very cask forwards. And I love that style as well. So like really sort of driven by the cask. In general, we try and make most of our releases more spirit forward in general. So all of our releases from both distilleries will start their life in bourbon casks. So a combination of first and second fill in general. And then we'll have an additional finishing period in the cask type that we want to add on at the end. This is a sort of process that we've been doing since our master blender Ian took over as master blender. So Ian Forteeth, wonderful gentleman. Some of you may have been on calls with him in the past. Ian's a big wine guy, loves his wine, loves his whiskey, loves his cheese. He loves a lot of things, Ian.
Cigar.
Yeah, he loves a cigar. He loves it all. So he's been really trying to sort of drive our two distilleries into the future and give the consumer the opportunity to try Tomintoul and Glencadam down in different cask types. So going back to the 17, I talked about the fact that, you know, most of what we do is quite spirit forwards. If you ever try Glencadam's core releases, so the 10-year-old, say the 13, the 15-year-old as well, fully bourbon matured, very fresh, very fruity. The 17 is a little different, and that one does have a big cask influence compared to most of our others. So this one started its life in bourbon, and then was finished for around 3.5 years in PX quarter casks. So for anyone unaware, quarter cask, quarter the size. The smaller you make it, the more liquid you have touching wood, so the faster it matures. So this has very, very sort of rich, almost espresso coffee, dark chocolate kind of notes running through it, with the base of that sort of freshness of classic Glencadam behind it as well. So as rich Glencadams go, this is one of the richest ones you're going to get. Normally, Glencadam is a lot more fresh and bright. This is a more dense, heavy style of Glencadam. But with Glencadam's spirit being so bright, when you give it a big cask, it kind of soaks it all in. It's almost like if anyone on the calls tried a very old grain whiskey that's been put in like an Oloroso or a sherry cask. Normal grain is very fresh and vanilla, but if you put it in a heavy cask, it kind of sucks it all in and it becomes beautiful. It's really rich and heavy. For me, Glencadam does a similar job. It starts fresh. We put it in these PX quarter casks, and it's added all these layers of, again, these darker, rich kind of elements like espresso and dark chocolate and sort of these yummy wood spices as well.
Awesome. So we see on the bottle it's 4,000 bottles. So some people say it's quite a lot, but I mean we have to think that it's for the world. So globally, to be able to have some of these bottles here, it's quite nice. So um, you sell pretty much everywhere in all markets, if I'm right, eh? North
We try,
America, Europe, Asia.
yeah, yeah, we try our best to. Canada's a very important market for us, and it's one where we're trying our best to grow because, as you said at the start, for many consumers, they won't have tried many Glencadams or Tomintouls before. So it's a market that we know we need to do more with, and we're going to try our best to do as much as we can with Canada moving forwards because you guys know your whiskey. You've got great palates, and it's about you being able to discover how good Glencadam and Tomintoul can be. So it's pretty good. If anyone on the call has never tried a Glencadam, you really should try one. It's great.
I think with the products we have now, the 13 has been a big success in the last 2 years with this incredible bourbon, I'd say, taste, and there are not a lot of well done just bourbon cask in the market right now.
Yeah.
So that was pretty nice. But now we are going in another direction again with all these finish with the other products with the another range of Glencadam. So there are I think 8 or 10 of in this series, I think, right
Yeah,
now.
there's quite a few. So the original bottle was the one you showed at the start, the Andalusia Reserva. That
Yeah.
was one of Ian's first forays into blending. So our master blender, Ian, is one of the few master blenders in Scotland that came from a brand ambassador role. So he did what I do, and then there was a sort of company-wide sensory analysis that went round. Ian has a fantastic palate, as we've talked about, and slowly has taken over as master blender. Our old master blender retired. Ian is now fully the master blender. And the Andalusia was one of his first releases that was kind of his project, his baby, however you want to call it. And it was fantastic. It's a really great example of Glencadam with a bit of sherry in there as well. So that one is Oloroso. And I think it was a couple of summers ago now, we decided to expand on that range following what the Andalusia had done. So the range originally was to basically be 2 different types of sherry. So we have the Oloroso and there was a PX, 2 different wines, which was a Pinot Noir and a Merlot, and 2 different ports, which was a white port and a tawny port. What you've got on the screen at the moment is one of the new ones that's just joined the range alongside the Amarone, which is the Madeira.
Yeah, so there's this one, and there's if I go back here with this picture, so the Amarone, and then the Pinot Noir there was there before. So we have the chance to get the last 2 in this group order, and then one that we did not taste before as well. So if you can talk a little bit about maybe globally how it's done, but specifically how this one tastes, or how Jan decided to go with the Madeira.
Yeah, so Madeira is something that Ian loves. He loves Madeira as a drink in general. As I said, Ian loves a lot of things. You know, if it's alcoholic, he probably loves it. If it's bad for him, he probably loves it as well. But he loves Madeira. He's been over to the island and seen the wines, and he drinks a lot of the wines as well. So he bought a couple of different styles of Madeira casks for us to use. Some that had used red grape styles of Madeira, and others that were white grape styles of Madeira. The Glencadam, so the one on the screen at the moment, is a red grape style of Madeira. But the Tomintoul 15, which was also one of the bottles that we're going to talk about, is the white grape style. So they're actually different styles of Madeira. These non-age statement Glencadams, much like everything else, started their life in bourbon. And then they're finished for normally around 2 years in the finishing cask. So it'll normally be around 4 years in the bourbon, a couple of years in the finishing cask, give or take, depending on what the casks are giving us. but it's
Okay.
normally at least a 2-year finish. So we try not to do flash finishes or anything like that. I know a lot of companies do finishes for, say, less than a year. At Angus Dundee, we almost exclusively do around at least 2. Sometimes much longer than that as well, but it's normally around the 2-year period of finishing, especially for these on-age statements.
To really give the product the real the taste. And if you are like for a 4 or 5 years old in bourbon, finishing in 2 years, that there's a big part of the finishing that is done in this finishing cask. At some point, it's like more like a second aging than.
Yeah, there's been a lot of chats, like at what point is a second maturation or a finish? But what we don't want to do is spend a lot of money buying, a really good Madeira cask for it not to translate through to the product. So as I said, Ian loves the wine, so he's not buying Madeira casks just as a willy-nilly throw it at the wall, see if it sticks kind of thing. He loves the wines. He wants to buy products or wines that he already enjoys and try and add elements of what he sees in that come through to Glencadam and Tomintoul. So the Madeiras for me, especially with this release, are very sort of, you get a sort of orange peel kind of zestiness come through in it. The classic Glencadam of its age is very sort of citrusy and bright, but this adds this lovely sort of, again, almost orange peel, candied fruit kind of styles on top that come through in this one. A great example of a fresh style of whiskey. So if you want something that's going to be zippy and zingy and clean and, a beautiful sort of summer whiskey dram, then this one is absolutely perfect from that.
Awesome. And one thing that is nice also with this range, like the 3 we have at the bottom, is the price is really accessible. I mean, it's one of the target also of Vient, creating like product with different taste and different finish or agings, let's say, but at the same time that is accessible. So you can go and taste really different finishing or type of cask, but not at $300-400. You can have that. And in fact, the price for us here, it's around $110, so it's very accessible. So
that was absolutely a thought point for this entire range. It was to allow the consumer to try very interesting cask types at an affordable price point. As you said, a lot of the times when you're trying something like a Madeira finish or a wine finish or whatever it may be, you can get them, but you're paying for it. It's normally a limited edition release that's going to be much older. We wanted to have a range that is very affordable, very accessible, but you also get to try these interesting cask types at the same time. And it's been, a very successful range for us to do that. So I'm very glad that we did. Going all the way back to my granddad at the start of the call, he was not a rich man. He wasn't buying fancy old single malts. He was buying what he could afford. I got into whiskey through that. And, I've had the privilege of trying some very old, very expensive whiskeys in my day, but you don't have to spend crazy money on whiskey to get a good whiskey. You can get some absolutely incredible whiskeys for a good price. And it's something that we really wanted to try and hit with this range in particular.
Yeah. If we jump in the other one, so there's the Amarone also here. It's not a type of cask we see a lot. There is a Amarone that is quite nice. So can talk a little bit more about this product as well.
Yeah. So as you said, there's a couple of others on the market for the Amarones. I love the Aran. It was one of my favorites way back before I even worked for Angus Dundee, and it's a wine that I enjoy on the side as well. This one, compared to the Madeira, which, as I said, was a little bit more sort of fresh and zingy, this one has a little bit more of that sort of red fruit note come through. You get a little bit more sort of berries. You get a little bit more of a sort of almost like red grape skin kind of note come through in it as well. But it's still a fresh whiskey. It's still on the lighter side. It's still on the fresher side. And that's all coming from that base spirit of Glencadam. So again, with this range, you take it in the bourbon, you build up all that sort of citrus and pineapple and Yellowstone fruits. And then the cask on the end for the last couple of years is just going to add some top notes to it. It's going to add in whatever the wine is giving it or what the Madeira is giving it. So in this case, a little bit more of those red fruit kind of notes come through in it on the top. So sort of fresh summer berry kind of style.
Mm-hmm. And for the Pinot Noir, are we also on the fruit side for that one? More wine?
We're definitely still on the fruit side, but for me, the Pinot Noir also has some interesting, slightly richer notes on alongside the lighter stuff. So it has a little bit of almost, again, coffee or a little bit of like Black Forest Gateau, like a chocolatiness to it. But yes, you're still going to get some of those red fruits that you expect from the wine itself, and you're still going to have the base that we've talked about with the rest of the range, which is quite fresh, is quite citrusy, and is quite zingy. So another great whiskey. Again, if you like a wine cask finished whiskey, the base character of Glencadam's amazing. The wine casks we got hold of are really, really good as well, and it's at a great price point. So it ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, awesome. Time flies, and we have still 2 more products to talk about. Now with the Tomintoul, we had the opportunity. I know there are other products in that range too, but we have the opportunity now to have the 14 and the 15 with a cognac. Maybe we can talk about the cognac first. Just going to bring that on the screen as well as you start.
Yep. So 14 cognac. One thing I've not mentioned yet is with the non-age statement range. So with the Glencadams that we just talked about, and there is a non-age statement range for Tomintoul as well available in other markets. What we try and normally do is if there is a non-age statement version, we'll also come out with an age statement version at some point down the line. So we talked about the 17PX for Glencadam. There's also a non-age statement PX in that range.
Okay.
The Andalusia is an Oloroso. There is a 15 Oloroso as well.
Okay.
So there's a non-age statement cognac, and so we have the 14. So with this one, with the age statement ones, they'll be non-chill filtered, natural color again, and we often do the finish slightly longer than the 2 years. So this one is closer to a 3-year finish. I believe it's 2 years, 8 months on the cognac, roughly on this one. But this will be taking the base characteristic of Tomintoul, which is a bit more biscuity, a little bit more sort of malty. It's got a little bit more honey in there as well as a base character. And then you add a little bit of freshness and a little bit of fruit from the cognac on top. So it's quite crisp, almost like a green apple crispness to it, with a background of the biscuits and the malt. Really beautiful, really fresh style of Glencadam, of Tomintoul.
Awesome. That's great. And we have, with the other Tomintoul, we have also a Madeira cask. That's what you mentioned. So how would you compare this one with the Glencadam then?
It's actually quite different. As I said, it's a different style of Madeira. So
Yeah.
a lot of the times people would just assume we're using the same Madeira. We get the casks in, we separate them to both distilleries. And a bit of that will happen. You know, you get a batch of sherry casks or a batch of wine casks, and some will go to Tomintoul and will go to Glencadam. But at the same time, sometimes Ian will like to play around with them a little bit and maybe use this for this and this for that. So as I said, this uses a white grape style of Madeira. And whereas the Glencadam for me has a little bit more of that orangey sort of zestiness to it. This will be hard to explain for people from Canada, but for me, it has what in Scotland we call it tablet. It's a dessert, which is it's like a caramelized sugar that's condensed into a little cube, but
Okay.
it's a very sort of sweet, almost like a toffee caramel kind of note for tablet with this one. Less of that sort of citrus rind for me, and a little bit more of the sort of sweet freshness. And I think a little bit of that is coming from the Madeira, but I think that is also a little bit of the biscuitiness of the base spirit of Tomintoul shining through as well.
Oh, okay.
So when you're taking the sweet wine and you're adding in that biscuitiness, it's coming together to get this almost sort of sweet toffee vibe for me in between. So yeah, it is quite different from the Glencadam Madeira, but it's absolutely beautiful. I love this release. The 15 Tomintoul Madeira was one of my favorites of the whiskies that came when that came out. I absolutely loved it. It's a cracking whiskey, really good.
So there's definitely a value for someone who wants to taste different things to buy both, buy the Glencadam Madeira and buy also the Tomintoul Madeira. Then the 14, it will be a different experience.
Yeah.
Awesome.
One thing I need to talk about for Tomintoul before you kick me off the call as well. I've talked a lot about Ian, our master blender, and I'd be shocked if anyone in the company saw me talk about Ian and not mention Robert. So Robert's our master distiller for both distilleries. His name is on the front of the Tomintoul bottles. He's a 4th generation distiller in the Glenlivet Valley where we're situated. So his father, his grandfather, his grandfather's father have been making whiskey up there for a very long time. And so his name will be on the front of any of the Tomintouls, but is in control of production at Glencadam as well. And also, you'll notice on the Tomintoul bottles, it says Speyside Glenlivet. We have no association with the other distillery, Glenlivet, but that is the location that we're in. So if there was any questions on why that's on the label, that is why.
Yeah, I understand. There's someone who asked, is there a Merlot cask finish that in your range, or yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Glencadam has a Merlot. It's a non-age statement at the moment, but as I said, in the future you may see an age statement version come out down the line as well. There's for Tomintoul, we've done a Tempranillo and an Amarone as well recently. So there's lots of, and there's other things down. So there's going to be a lot of experimentation. You're going to see quite a bunch of new interesting cask types come out in the next year or two, as a lot of the work that Ian's done a few years ago is starting to come to fruition now.
Yeah, nice, awesome. So thank you for passing through this range of products we're having for the group order. Maybe we can finish talking a little bit about the market, because there are some many things, let's say, many things happening in the market, in the world market for whiskey these days. I'm just wondering how Angus Dundee or Glencadam and Tomintoul is going through this I would not say difficult, but let's say challenging market. So demand decrease, and there are some countries that are more difficult to enter than others. So how do you go through this?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that happens in whiskey all the time. By all the time, I mean in the history that we've been making whiskey in Scotland. There's peaks where everyone loves it, and then something happens and it goes down, it comes up. We had a big crash in the early 1900s called the Patterson crash. The 80s and the 90s, or the Whiskey Loch, was a bad time. And we talked about it before this call started, but I would even say that we were due a slowing down at some point. Yeah. We've had what we could class as the information age from the 2000s onwards. From, you go back 20 odd years, we wouldn't be having this call. You couldn't just go on the screen and talk to a brand ambassador or someone from the distillery and learn about the whiskey. You might possibly have a whiskey show in your city. If you did, there's so many more big whiskey shows these days as well. Whiskey clubs have increased, the YouTube or books, all this stuff, and that's helped us ride some waves, COVID included, but financial crashes in the past as well. So this is a tough time for the industry as a whole, for many different companies. But Angus Dundee, we've done a lot of investment recently. We're building a visitor center, as we talked about, to have more people see us. We're building a distillery in China at the moment as well. And there's a lot of going on in the company. And we're still making enough whiskey to be able to put down stock, which is very, very important. We mentioned it previously, but I think that the challenge will be for distilleries that need to sell to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have enough stock, if there is a slowdown, you can just, hold on to the stock, and then when things get going again, we now have aged stock to sell, and there's a beautiful balance that way.
Yeah.
Our founder Terry once said a very good quote, which was, he hates selling whiskey, which obviously isn't true. If you own a whiskey company, you don't hate selling whiskey. But I think the thought behind it is, if we don't sell it, that means I have older stock to sell in the future, or
Yeah.
I have more stuff that we can play with for releases. Ian has a bigger, palette of colors to use for the next release as well.
Yeah.
So even though it is a downturn, Angus Dundee, we're still doing a lot of investment, and the more we can do calls like this and talk to wonderful markets like Canada and get you guys to try more Tomintoul and Glencadam, we should be able to ride the wave, and hopefully the future is bright for Scotch whiskey.
Awesome. Thank you for your comments about this. So already 45 minutes. Time flies. Thank you very much for sharing that time with us. It's really appreciated. We met a few months ago in Montreal for an event. You're probably coming back in the future also in Quebec province. We'll be more than happy to have you for other discussions and meet you and talk about your new releases maybe, and everything Jan decided to release at that time. So
yeah, I'd love to do a tasting in person at some point. So we'll see if we can get something organized.
Awesome. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining this call or looking at the call after on Facebook or YouTube. So thank you to everyone. If you have questions about I'm going to switch in French just a little bit. So, si vous avez des questions sur le groupe de commande, sur les produits qu'on a pour le groupe, n'hésitez pas à m'envoyer un message à travers Facebook ou par email. Ça va me faire plaisir d'y répondre. Sinon, directement sur la page de Passion Whisky Québec, vous avez le lien à l'écran, commande avec un s.passionwhiskyquebec.com. Vous pouvez directement participer, donc prendre votre place pour les produits que vous voulez avoir dans le groupe. Donc, encore une fois, merci tout le monde. Thank you very much, Cody, again, and looking forward for another conversation in the future.
Me too. Slàinte. Have a good lunch, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.